moving on to our conversation of the day, which will handle these very issues. It was supposed to be plain sailing in the European Union, but now it seems that negotiations will take a while longer. And to discuss that, we are joined by Karolina Borońska-Hryniewiecka, Associate Research Fellow at the Université Paris-Panthéon-Sorbonne. Welcome to TVP World. I'm glad that you could join us here today.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Hello.
So would you say that the situation has now become much more complicated, or is it simply maneuvering between individual factions in the European Union which simply want to gain something more ahead of the big announcement that most likely Ursula von der Leyen is saying that most of the predictions have come true, but there are still these small wins obtained through this, background maneuvering between individuals involved?
Well, I personally think that the media have, I would say, inflated expectations a little bit before this meeting, because let's remind everybody that the yesterday meeting of heads of state was an informal gathering. Informal means that no formal decisions can be taken and announced normally. So I think that we should not really overstate any sort of disappointment and all these headlines about black smoke over Brussels. I think they are a little bit overdone. From what I hear and what I read from the press correspondents being present there, what we have to admit is that yes, it was kind of exceptional meeting because there were no leaks at this time, there were no phones inside the room, there was a lot of silence, so everybody's kind of interested very much of what happened. But apparently there are no controversies and there are no little hiccups or scandals going on behind the closed doors. It looks like the main four positions for the top jobs, so let's remind which ones they are. So European Commission President will most probably go to Ursula von der Leyen, and there were no objections about it. The presidency of the Council is supposed to go to the former Portuguese Prime Minister Antonio Costa from the Socialists and Democrats. Then we have Roberta Metsola, who's going to probably continue the European Parliament's presidency. And then we have the Renew or the Liberals candidate, the Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas, for the High Representative. And this was all kind of circulating in the last days and weeks. And I don't foresee any big changes or any sort of changes. We obviously had a little, I would say, a surprise demand or surprise, I would say, proposal coming from the EPP, so the main winning party, because during this meeting, the EPP leaders have presented some sort of, I would say, a maximalist proposal. Apart from these two candidates for Commission and for the Parliament, they have also suggested to kind of change the presidency of the European Council into a rotating presidency, which means 2.5 years agreed for the socialist at the beginning, that would be Antonio Costa, and then after 2.5 years, the position would shift to the Popular Party, the European People's Party. So that, I don't think that was well received. And maybe that also caused the necessity to kind of digest everything again and come back to the decisions next week. But as I said, this was just an informal summit, and I think everything is on a good way.
Right, but still adding another layer to what you just mentioned. Now, the nomination process itself for the EU leadership roles involves intense negotiations between the EU member states, and each country aims to secure positions that will enhance effectively their influence within the EU. So my question is, what strategies, to your mind, are member states using to secure these key positions within the EU?
Well, as you've said, the national positions are very important, but the most important kind of object in the picture is actually the results of the elections. So this has to be set in stone, and this is in line with democracy, that the top jobs are going to the three main winning European groups. So European People's Party, Socialists, and the Renew Liberals. Many people were expecting that probably that maybe liberals will not come the third but the fourth, and they will be taken over by European conservatives and reformists of Giorgia Meloni, but this did not happen. We know that Meloni, together with Orban and the other right-wingers, they have big ambitions and they have big appetite, and they want to stress that because the right-wing parties have secured a good amount of votes, a better result than 5 years ago, they have some sort of a mandate to take a top job. Orban actually tweeted that yesterday, and I really thought that was impertinent and kind of rude, because he said in his tweet that EU leaders have not listened, or the European People's Party have not listened to the voice of the people, disregarding a candidate from European conservatives and reformists for any top job. Well, I would say to that, excuse me, Mr. Orban, but if you and your party will win the next European elections, then you can be a deal maker. In this situation, we have a clear code of conduct. The three leaders, the three winners, take decisions about the leading jobs.
So we're still going to have the Hungarian presidency to deal with along the way. But coming back to the question of candidates, Kaja Kallas likely replacing Mr. Josep Borrell. What could she bring to the table? Is this actually a good candidacy, especially for our region, Central and Eastern Europe?
She definitely is, and as our Prime Minister Donald Tusk underlined yesterday, she is an obvious candidate because she knows very well the geopolitical situation that is the most important situation in the world nowadays, war in Ukraine, and she is also a stark opponent and a person who was pushing very much to strengthen the sanctions on Russia. She is also very supportive of Ukraine, and she basically has the guts, I would say, the balls, to be a very strong and also, I would say, charismatic High Representative for Foreign Affairs, because this is an important role as the Union is becoming a geopolitical player. We need people like that. And we also need people with understanding of the Eastern policy. But I also want to, when we are talking about Kallas, I want to underline the role of Tusk in all this geometry, let's say, because he took part. He was one of the leading negotiators during this meeting and before this meeting yesterday. He took part in the sort of behind-the-scenes talks, first with socialists and then with liberals, and he's actually playing the first violin. Can you say that? Okay, along with a Greek leader, also from the EPP, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, and also with other leaders like Macron. But imagine, we have Tusk, who has won elections and who's now coming back to the political scene in Europe. And we have Macron on the other side, who was always some sort of disruptor, someone who would bring new ideas. But now he's really kind of diminished because he lost the European elections, and he's also facing another election at home in 2 weeks. So he has to kind of stay a little bit behind the others with ideas and with leading the negotiations.
Which, in fact, brings me to my next question, because speculation is high about the roles the Polish representatives might secure in the new EU leadership structure in Poland is aiming to increase, in fact, its influence within the EU, potentially securing significant position in the European Commission or other key bodies. But what is your take on this?
Are you asking by Radosław Sikorski, for example, as a commissioner for defense? Perhaps. Well, I think that this is the second step in the whole code of in the sequence of events now. Because first we need to be sure who are the top people at the helm of the institutions, and then the discussion about commissioners will start. We also have to remember that the commissioners are proposed by member states, and of course each of the member states would like to have a strong portfolio. It also depends on the interest of certain states. We know that Poland is interested in defense, we know that Italy is very much interested in economic issues, etc. But these candidatures will have to be also accepted by the plenary of the European Parliament. So this is not only what the countries said, this is also some degree of democracy, electoral democracy, that we celebrated a week ago during the elections. And coming back to Radosław Sikorski, we heard yesterday that he's not interested in the position of the Commissioner for Defense at the moment. And Donald Tusk also underlined, and I strongly agree with that we need this sort of persons and personalities as influential ministers. I think that being a foreign minister during these very difficult times, when we have war on our eastern border, and when we have wars in Middle East, when we have Russia and China, kind of power grabbing, we need people like that, and he can be much more influential as a foreign minister than as a commissioner. This is my personal take on that.
And speaking of which, we've established that the current Polish government has an ability to act as a team player. So basically using the synergies with the partners within the European Union to influence the course of the EU as a whole. Do you think that this could prove helpful in the objective of the EU transitioning from being more of an association of states acting on the economic field to having this sort of geopolitical clout? This is important actually because we still don't know what the results of the elections in the United States are going to be. If the US becomes isolationist under Donald Trump, the EU will be kind of forced into this position of actually taking up the mantle. What do you think?
Yes, of course, I agree with that. We have a big potential to play an important role, but I also wanted to kind of revise one thing that you've mentioned. The European Union for already a very long time is not an association of states. I always, as a political scientist, underline in every possible meeting or in the media that the European Union is a political system sui generis. This is much more than normal international organization. It's not like NATO, it's not like OECD, it's not like UN. It has its parliament, it has its two legislative chambers, it has its own legal system, the primacy of European law over national law. So this is much more than just association of states. And in this special aspect, it is very important that we have people in power in different countries who are, I would say, elements of this political system, who understand how it's working. And Donald Tusk is very good at that. He's also very good now at playing more assertive position than Poland used to play many years ago. For example, when Poland had its first EU presidency, I think it was 2011. We have learned the lesson. We know that we don't have to be the best pupil in the classroom. We don't have to be, always doing what the Commission is saying. We can be constructive. We can propose good solutions, but we also are assertive, and we also know how to, protect or push forward interests of this Central Eastern part of Europe that is now becoming more and more important, especially in the light of what's going on in France and what's going on in Germany. I'm talking about the far right.
One quick question towards the end. Do you think the alliance of right-wing parties is likely to happen given their ideological differences?
In what context this alliance, you mean?
In the context of recent reports that these parties are negotiating to perhaps form a more powerful bloc composed of most
in the European Parliament.
Yes, precisely.
I don't believe that, because if you look at the cracks in their different positionings with regard to Russia, with regard to sanctions on Russia, have a look at the Orban tweet from yesterday. He said precisely that the silly investments or sending financial aid to Ukraine has to stop. So how can such a person cooperate with Giorgia Meloni, who is actually trying to, put herself into the mainstream and be solidary with Ukraine? On the other hand, we have Peace, who is very much against any sort of migration pact, and we have again Giorgia Meloni, who has voted for the migration pact. And there are other differences. I'm not mentioning AfD or Le Pen. They have all very different nuanced position that I don't believe will help them to create any coherent bloc.
Certainly. Thank you so much, Karolina Borońska-Hryniewiecka, for your insights and for, let's say, showing us the intricacies of the EU election and the world post-EU elections.
Thank you.